let's say, hypothetically, that Jefferson would get a deal done as soon as today. Let's say it would happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen today. I'm just saying as a practical matter, it could happen as soon as today. Then you've got other dominoes that will fall. We talked last week about how easy it would be, relatively speaking, to take the Jamar Chase contract, which has 2 years left, at a lower amount and throw on new money average. Even though the total dollars would be lower, you could get close to what Justin Jefferson gets without the same total dollars because you've got year 4 and 5th year option for Jamar Chase, which
right.
I think he's making 16 or under 16 per year on average over the next 2 years.
Right.
Bless you if you sneezed. Bless you anyway if you didn't. But I think it's around 16 in the 2 years left. So you throw 3 or 4 years on the back end at something close to what Jefferson is going to get in new money average, the lower the dollars become. It's complicated, but
Yeah.
we wrote about it last week,
Yeah.
and I tried to explain it on the show, but I probably screwed it up.
I think
the
you
first time,
you
nor the last.
Yeah, no, you got it there. You got it there. I mean, basically what you're saying is new money could be groundbreaking, but when you add it to the last 2 years of how they can tie them up, it might look a little different or take a little bit of the edge off of that final average per year.
South of 30.
Right.
It's like 27, I think. You could get him around 36 or 37 million per year in new money, and it would still be south of 30 million in total payout over 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's where
year.
that to me complicates things, right? And that's where I could see them having a little, issues trying to figure that out. As far as then also competing, Jamar Chase and his camp, competing with Justin Jefferson and making sure the number does look the same, similar, close, whatever, right? And again, I got no problem with that because I would tell you Jamar Chase is in that class. He's in that class of Justin Jefferson as far as should be one of the highest paid non-quarterbacks or not in football. Yeah, non-quarterbacks, highest paid receiver, whatever you want to say. It's another guy that is, he's transcendent in a lot of ways. You can just line him up in one place and go, what do you want to do? You want to cover him one-to-one, one-on-one? Then Joe's going to throw to him. You're going to double him? Then other people are going to be open over here. They make it as simple as that in Cincinnati. I mean, he's truly a weapon of that in itself. Special football player. And yeah, I mean, I think this is a no-brainer that it gets done. But I think that fifth-year option and one more year on the deal does make it a little harder to finagle this whole thing with them.
And it gets back to the somewhat spirited conversation we had last week, sparked by comments from Jamar Chase on the balance between getting what's yours and leaving enough behind so there's a team on the field around you. And bottom line, without replowing that ground, it favors the owners for that mindset to take root and spread among fans, media, and players because it ultimately makes it cheaper for them to keep the best players and easier for them to staff the super yachts. Because that's probably $1 million or $2 million a week just in. I saw somewhere where Jerry Jones is paying $1 million or $2 million a week just for the maintenance and staff on his boat.
Yeah, well, as you always say, they're winning. They're pocketing a lot, right? And I'm gold toilets, all of that. We've discussed that all. So they're certainly not hurting. We know the NFL is not hurting. We're always going to be pro player there. Yeah, but it's like with all right, so let me ask you this, right? Because this has crossed my mind too. Between Chase and Justin Jefferson and their thought process and their camps and their agents and all that as well, right? Do you think it helps the Vikings or the Bengals or vice versa with the two players to go like, well, wait, we got Joe Burrow. We're paying him all this. And then there's the Vikings going, and Justin Jefferson's camp can be like, well, you're not paying a quarterback anymore. It's just a rookie quarterback. Cousins is gone. You got all this money, right? Do you think that affects this situation at all as far as, the conversations there?
I think when you also throw in the fact that Jefferson is 1 year farther along in his career, it makes it easier to justify giving Jefferson the big money. But the complicating factor for the Bengals, this is the Matt Ryan, Julio Jones dynamic. The problem that the Falcons were dealing with 6 years ago right now when Julio Jones was looking at $15 million a year and Matt Ryan at $30 and saying something's wrong with this picture. I am more than 50% of Matt Ryan's value to the success of this team. Why is the quarterback just presumed to be the one who gets all the money.
Yeah.
I mean more than half of what Matt Ryan means to this team. So Joe Burrow's at 55. Where does Ja'Marr Chase, if he gets caught up in that aspect of it, where does he have to be to show his relative worth in comparison to Joe Burrow? And there's also going to be that just friendly rivalry. And Chase has spoken about this in the past. He wants to catch Justin and maybe pass Justin.
Yeah.
And, I mean, let's be fair. They're both great.
Yeah.
They both deserve to be paid a ton of money. I think Justin's more accomplished in his career to date than Chase. They're both very accomplished, but I think that if you're checking the box, who's had the better career so far, and Jefferson's had one more year to do it, I'd say it's Jefferson over Chase.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. He has had the better career, right? I think he maybe had a little bit better of a, he's got to go to a place right away where he was the guy, and it was really like only him at first. I think that did help him out, right? And then, of course, he had a quarterback that had, been there, done that, and wasn't like learning on the fly just like he was. So that helped him out. And then, of course, we know Kevin O'Connell getting there took it to another level, right? So I'm with you there. The Bengals, he's had to deal with a little bit of Chase has had a little deal with the, Joe Burrow injuries, right? And some of that stuff, too, that I think hurt his bottom line and stats and that as well. But, I would agree with you that they're more, Justin Jefferson's more accomplished, right? And as you always hear me say, right, when I talk to friends around football, front office, coaches, there's always four names that get brought up. And when I get into wide receiver conversations that they think stand above the rest. And, of course, it's these two. It's A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill. Always. Like always. So, but I think the other thing, too, that's interesting in the nuance here is, Jefferson, tall, longer, rangy kind of guy, do all that, but not as explosive as Ja'Marr Chase. That's where I would say Chase has an advantage in some areas. Chase is a guy that I think can catch a slant and run 80 yards for a touchdown, where Justin Jefferson catches a slant and maybe runs 55 yards and gets you down to the 10-yard line, if that makes sense, right? So there's a little difference in their skill set and what they do there. And where Ja'Marr Chase is going to go, wait, my quarterback was banged up, and we had other receivers that ate into what I was going to do. If I was in Justin Jefferson's situation, maybe my stats would be every bit as good or better too, and that'd probably be something he can stand on a little bit there.
And if they're not going to pay Tee Higgins, he might be in that situation.
I know, exactly, and we'll see it. Exactly right, and he will be featured this year, or the year after when Tee Higgins goes, and then they slowly bring along this Jermaine Burton from Alabama, who I think is damn good and can be ready to go and contribute for this team right away this year.
When you consider the contrarian history of Mike Brown, who runs the Bengals, I am not ready to completely rule out the possibility of the franchise tag being yanked off of Tee Higgins. I'm really not ready to rule that out. It hasn't happened very often, but this is the guy who votes against everything.
Yep, I know.
That the NFL puts out there. Not literally everything, but close to everything. He is a guy who marches to the beat of his own drum, and he will not think twice. If Tee Higgins doesn't show up for training camp and Higgins thinks he's going to show up just before the start of the season and not maybe be ready to go and thinks he's going to maybe, and again, I don't have a problem with this if a guy doesn't have long-term security. I've been on record about this many times, but if his hamstring's sore, I'm not playing today. My ankle's kind of bothering me. I'm not putting myself at risk until I have my long-term contract and my security that goes with it. If you're Mike Brown and you're paying that guy $21.8 million and you're not going to get 100% even when he's not 100%, that's when you start thinking about your alternatives. And with one fell swoop, you can pick up $21.8 million in cash and cap space for the coming season. We've seen it happen 3 times in the past 20 years. Jeremiah Trotter, Corey Simon, and most recently Josh Norman. It's not unprecedented. It's not impossible. And if they're going to give Chase a ton of money, it's an argument that becomes easier to make. So Tee Higgins might want to think seriously about whether or not they're going to yank that tender and whether or not he would get 21.8 elsewhere if they yank it in August, because I'm not sure he would. He'd get a 1-year deal somewhere with maybe some not likely to be earned incentives that would push the cap space into 2025, but he's going to be hard-pressed to get 21.8 if they would decide August 20, we're taking off the franchise tag. It's something to keep an eye on.
I hear you. I mean, I'd be one to be like, I'd be advising if I saw Tee Higgins in the street right now, I'd be like, hey, get in there and sign that thing now. Just protect yourself. I mean, what's the point of not signing it now? That's what I would say. We're at the end of OTAs. There's like one mini camp left. Whatever, get it done. But here's where I'll just say I would agree with you, and that would be a real danger, I think, with the history of Mike Brown. And I don't disagree with anything you're saying there. But I think times have a change there, son. I think they have a change, Slugger, and they've changed, Slugger, because of one guy. Because of Joe Mother effing Burrow, okay? Joe Burrow.
Thank you for not saying.
You're right. He ain't going to let that shit happen. I'm going to say that, though. He ain't. It's just not. And they know. And Mike Brown knows right now the window's open. And if you ask me a team that, can win the Super Bowl this year, I'm going to go with the Bengals. I think that defense is going to improve. They made some proper adjustments on the back end with some of the safeties they got there. I'd be shocked if the Bengals aren't back in big-time games in late December where we're going, uh-oh, here they go again. And I think he knows that. And I think Joe Burrow's got a what do I want to say? A pulse, a finger on the organization that they've never had before. I can just bring it back to this. When I was there that day with Joe Burrow and we were playing handsies and having a catch and he was telling me all about that, right? I mean, I had to wait at one point during the interview because Mr. Brown wanted to talk to Joe Burrow and he wanted to get Joe Burrow's thoughts on something that was going on within the organization. But I just remember sitting there going, damn, it's, we're going into year 3 and Joe's the king around here already. Like, Joe is the effing king. And Joe likes Tee Higgins. They drafted him, and I just don't think they would do that because of Joe, honestly. I don't think he would let that fly in that locker room. That would just be my 2 cents, and, of course, I don't know that, but that's just the way I feel for them right now, at least.
Before they would do it, he would need to be on board with it, and they would need to explain why they're doing it and what the benefit is, what the cost is, what the pros are, what the cons are. So they wouldn't do it without talking to him, but at the same time, I wouldn't completely remove it from the radar screen, especially if it ensures that Jamar Chase is going to be under contract for the long term. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.